You are lying on your back. It's 7000 BC. Someone you trust is kneeling over you, and in their hand is a sharp piece of stone. They are not going to cut your arm. They are not going to pull a tooth. They are going to open your skull. And here is the part that should make your own head ache just thinking about it. You are awake, wide awake. There is no anesthesia. There is nothing to put you under. You are going to feel a stranger scrape a hole through the bone around your brain, and you are supposed to just lie there and take it. This sounds like the darkest kind of torture. It sounds like something you'd never survive, and something no sane person would ever agree to. But it was none of those things. Because this is trepanation, the deliberate drilling, cutting, or scraping of a hole into a living human skull. And it is one of the oldest surgeries in the entire human story. It was performed all over the world by people who had never met each other for thousands of years. And the most disturbing detail of all is that most of the people it was done to survived it. So the question isn't just how, it's why on earth would anyone do this on purpose? And why did it keep working? Let's start with a fact that shuts down every "they were just primitive" assumption instantly. We are not guessing that this happened. We have the skulls, hundreds and hundreds of them. Ancient human skulls from every inhabited continent with clean, deliberate holes carved into them. And archaeologists can tell in a heartbeat that these holes were made by human hands, not by injury or decay, because of how neat, how intentional, and how surgical they are. Some of the oldest come from Neolithic sites in France, dating back around 7,000 years. And from there, the practice shows up almost everywhere, across Europe, in Russia, in China, in Africa, and most spectacularly of all, in ancient Peru. This wasn't a weird local accident that happened once. It was a widespread, repeated, deliberate medical procedure that independent human cultures invented over and over again. When totally separate peoples, who could not possibly have copied each other, all arrive at the same shocking idea: cut a hole in the head, you have to stop and ask what they were all responding to. But here's the part that flips this from horror story to something genuinely astonishing. Look closely at those ancient skulls, and you find something incredible around the edges of the holes. The bone has healed. It's grown back. It's smooth and rounded and remodeled, which only happens in a living body over weeks, months, sometimes years. That healed bone is a message across time, and the message is unmistakable. This person did not die on the table. They lived. They walked around for years afterward with a healed hole in their head. And this wasn't rare luck. In some populations, the majority of trepanation skulls show healing, meaning most patients survived. Let that sink in. Stone Age people were opening skulls, and their patients were living through it, at rates that, frankly, should not have been possible for people with no idea that germs even existed. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because the true masters of this were the ancient Peruvians, especially the Inca. Their surgeons performed trepanation so often and so skillfully that researchers have studied hundreds of Incan skulls, and the survival rates they found are staggering. In the earliest periods, maybe half survived, but by the height of Incan surgery, survival rates climbed to something like 80, even 90%. To put that in perspective, during the American Civil War, thousands of years later, surgeons opening skulls lost around half their patients to infection. Stone Age Andean surgeons were beating industrial age doctors using blades made of obsidian and bronze, with no electricity, no antibiotics, and no idea what a bacterium was. How? They had gotten good. Generations of trial, error, and hard-won knowledge had taught them things. They learned to avoid the areas where big blood vessels ran under the skull. They learned to scrape gradually, rather than punch straight through, so they wouldn't damage the delicate membrane over the brain. They developed different techniques, carefully scraping the bone away, or cutting a neat circular groove, or drilling a ring of small holes and connecting them. This was skill. This was refined technique, passed down and improved across centuries. It was, in every meaningful sense, real surgery. So now let me throw the biggest question at you, the one you've been holding this whole time. Why? Why would anyone cut into a healthy person's skull in the first place? And the answer is where it stops being crazy and starts being weirdly logical. Because a lot of trepanation was almost certainly medical. Look at the skulls again, and many of them show signs of head trauma, a fracture, a nasty blow, right near where the hole was cut. Think about what happens with a serious head injury. Blood and fluid build up inside the rigid box of the skull, and there's nowhere for the pressure to go. That pressure crushes the brain, and it kills you, unless someone opens a hole and lets it out. That is not superstition. That is real, sound medical reasoning, and it works. Relieving pressure on the brain by opening the skull is genuinely life-saving. And here's the thing that should stop you cold. We still do it today. Modern neurosurgeons drill holes in skulls to relieve pressure and drain bleeding. They call it a craniotomy, or burr holes. It is one of the foundational operations in brain surgery. The ancient healer with a sharpened stone and the modern surgeon with a titanium drill are, on some deep level, doing the exact same thing for the exact same reason. Of course, it wasn't always about physical injury. In many cultures, trepanation was also spiritual. If someone suffered from crippling headaches, seizures, or what we'd now call mental illness, it was often believed that something bad was trapped inside the head, an evil spirit, a dark force, a pressure that needed release. And the solution was to open a door in the skull and let it out. To us, that sounds like nonsense, but notice how close that instinct is to the truth. They didn't have the words hematoma or intracranial pressure, but they had noticed, across thousands of cases, that sometimes opening the skull made the person better. And so they kept doing it. But now the uncomfortable part, because there's always one. It's tempting to walk away thinking these were all brilliant proto-surgeons. Many were. But trepanation was still brutal, and it was still terrifying. And plenty of people did die from shock, from blood loss, from infection, from a slip of the blade a millimeter too deep. Every healed skull we celebrate is standing on top of others that didn't heal at all. And remember the detail we started with. Much of this was done on people who were fully conscious. The courage or the desperation it took to hold still while someone scraped through your skull is almost impossible to imagine. This knowledge was paid for in pain and in lives, learned the only way ancient medicine could be learned, on real people, one terrifying attempt at a time. So let's pull it together. Did ancient humans really drill holes in their own skulls? Yes, deliberately, all over the world, for at least 7,000 years, using sharpened stone and bronze. And they weren't insane, and they weren't just torturing each other. They were relieving deadly pressure after head wounds. They were trying to heal seizures and unbearable pain the only way they knew. They got so good at it that Stone Age surgeons out-survived Civil War doctors. And they were, without knowing the word for it, performing the earliest brain surgery in human history. The next time you have a headache and reach for a painkiller, remember that a version of you thousands of years ago had a very different option lying on the ground. A sharp stone, a steady friend, and the terrible hope that opening the head would let the pain out. They looked at the most protected, most frightening part of the body, and they dared to open it. And somehow, more often than not, the person sat up, healed, and lived to tell the tale.